When three violent thugs corner a defenseless woman in an empty diner at midnight, they think no one will stop them. But the quiet man in the corner booth isn't who he seems. What happens next will restore your faith in justice and prove that heroes walk among us. The clock on the wall of Mel's diner read 11:15 at night. In the small town of Millbrook, population 8,000, most people were already asleep. The diner's neon sign flickered outside, casting red and blue shadows across the empty parking lot. Inside, the old-fashioned restaurant looked like it had been frozen in time since the 1950s. Black and white checkered floors, red vinyl booths, and a long counter with chrome-trimmed stools. The smell of coffee and apple pie still lingered in the air, even though the kitchen had closed 30 minutes ago. Rachel Thompson sat at the counter, her hands wrapped around a white ceramic mug of coffee that had gone lukewarm. She was 34 years old, with tired eyes and dark circles that told the story of too many sleepless nights. Her brown hair was pulled back in a simple ponytail, and she wore jeans and a plain sweater that had seen better days. Rachel had been driving for 3 hours, coming back from Cedar Grove Hospital in the next county. Her daughter Katie, only 7 years old, was in the pediatric ward there, a rare heart condition. The doctors said she needed surgery soon, but the insurance company kept finding reasons to deny coverage. Rachel had been working double shifts at the grocery store, saving every penny, but it still wasn't enough. Tonight, she had just wanted to sit somewhere quiet before driving the last hour home to her empty apartment. The only other customer in the diner sat in the corner booth by the window. He was an older man, maybe late 50s, with gray hair and a strong jawline. He wore an expensive-looking navy sweater and dark slacks, but nothing flashy. For the past hour, he had been reading a newspaper and occasionally sipping black coffee. His name was Thomas Bennett, though nobody in that diner knew it, and if they had known, they would have recognized him as one of the wealthiest men in the state, a billionaire investor and philanthropist whose face occasionally appeared in business magazines. But Thomas preferred anonymity. He liked stopping at small diners in forgotten towns, places where nobody knew who he was. It reminded him of where he came from, back when he had nothing. Behind the counter, a young waitress named Beth was counting the register and getting ready to close up. She glanced at the clock, then at her two remaining customers. She didn't want to rush them, but she was exhausted. It had been a long shift. That's when the door burst open with enough force to make the little bell above it ring violently. Three men walked in, and immediately the atmosphere in the diner changed. You could feel the danger rolling off them like heat from asphalt in summer. The leader was a man in his mid-30s named Derek Walsh. He had a shaved head, a thick neck, and the kind of swagger that came from never being told no. His two friends followed behind him. Troy Miller, covered in tattoos that crawled up his neck, his eyes bloodshot and mean. And Brett Johnson, the youngest at 25, skinny but with the nervous energy of someone looking to prove himself. They were drunk, not stumbling drunk, but that dangerous kind of drunk where inhibitions disappear and bad ideas sound good. Derek looked around the diner with a predatory smile. His eyes landed on Beth first, then slowly moved to Rachel sitting alone at the counter. Beth forced a polite smile. "I'm sorry, gentlemen, but the kitchen is closed. We're about to lock up for the night." Derek ignored her completely. He walked straight toward Rachel, his boots heavy on the checkered floor. Troy and Brett spread out, flanking him like wolves who had spotted prey. Rachel sensed them before she even turned around. Her body tensed, her hand tightening around her coffee mug. She had been through enough in life to recognize danger when it walked through the door. "Well, well, well," Derek said, his voice dripping with false friendliness. "What do we have here? Pretty lady all alone at this hour. That doesn't seem safe." Rachel didn't look at him. She kept her eyes forward, her voice quiet but firm. "I'm fine, thank you. Just finishing my coffee." Derek laughed, a sound with no humor in it. He sat down on the stool right next to her, even though there were 15 empty stools he could have chosen. Troy moved to stand behind Rachel, blocking her from the door. Brett took position on her other side. They had done this before. You could tell by how smoothly they moved, how they cut off every exit without saying a word. "Did you hear that, boys?" Derek said, leaning close enough that Rachel could smell the whiskey on his breath. "She says she's fine, but I don't know. You look a little lonely to me. Maybe you need some company." Rachel's heart was pounding now. She could feel the panic rising in her chest, but she fought to keep her voice steady. I'd like you to please leave me alone. I'm not looking for company. Troy leaned down, his tattooed arms resting on the counter behind her, caging her in. That's not very friendly. We just want to talk. What's wrong with talking? In the corner booth, Thomas slowly folded his newspaper. He had been watching from the moment the three men entered. Years ago, he had served in the military. He had been trained to assess threats, to read body language, to know when a situation was about to turn violent. And everything about these three men screamed danger. But he stayed still, waiting, watching. Sometimes situations de-escalated on their own, but he was ready if they didn't. Beth behind the counter clutched her phone with shaking hands. Guys, please, you need to leave. We're closed. Derek's head snapped toward her, his eyes going cold. Did I ask you something? No? Then shut your mouth. The words hit Beth like a slap. She took a step back, her face going pale. Rachel tried to stand up, tried to slide off the stool and create some distance. But Derek's hand shot out and grabbed her wrist. Not hard enough to hurt yet, but firm enough to stop her. Where do you think you're going, he said, his voice dropping lower. We're not done getting to know each other. Rachel pulled against his grip. Let go of me. Right now. Brett laughed, that nervous energy spilling out of him. She's got some fire. I like that. Troy reached out and touched Rachel's hair, running a strand between his fingers. That's when something broke inside Rachel. The fear turned to anger, turned to desperation. She jerked away from both of them, her voice rising. Don't touch me! Get away from me! Derek's expression changed. The fake friendliness vanished, replaced by something dark and cruel. He grabbed Rachel's wrist harder now, enough to make her wince. Or what? What are you going to do about it? Troy snatched Rachel's purse off the counter and dumped the contents out. Her wallet, car keys, chapstick, and several folded papers scattered across the surface. He picked up the papers and unfolded them, his eyes scanning the words. Medical bills, hospital information, documentation about Katie's heart condition. Oh, look at this, Troy said, his voice mocking. She's got a sick kid. That's rough. Medical bills are expensive, aren't they? Maybe you need money. We could help you out, if you're nice to us. Tears burned in Rachel's eyes, but she refused to let them fall. These men were feeding on her fear, on her vulnerability, and she wouldn't give them the satisfaction. But she was trapped. Derek still had her wrist. Troy was behind her. Brett was blocking the other side. Beth was frozen behind the counter, phone in hand but too terrified to dial. Please, Rachel said, her voice breaking. Please just leave me alone. I haven't done anything to you. Derek leaned in close, his breath hot on her face. Nobody here is going to help you, honey. Just cooperate, and this goes easy. Fight us, and it goes hard. Your choice. Rachel's eyes darted around the diner, desperate for help, for anything. That's when she saw him, the man in the corner booth. He was standing now, tall and solid, his gray eyes locked on the scene at the counter. For a moment their eyes met, and something passed between them. A silent question, a silent answer. Please, Rachel called out, her voice cracking with desperation. Someone help me. Thomas Bennett set his coffee cup down on the table with a soft clink. He had seen enough. He had waited to see if these men would come to their senses, if they would back down. They hadn't. And now a woman was in danger, and he was the only person in this diner who could do something about it. He had been in worse situations. He had faced down worse men, and he had never walked away from someone who needed help. He started walking toward the counter, his footsteps measured and calm. Derek noticed him first, turning his head with an annoyed expression. You got a problem over there, old man? Thomas stopped a few feet away from them. His voice was calm, but it carried weight. The kind of voice that came from years of commanding boardrooms and making decisions that affected thousands of lives. I think the lady asked you to leave her alone. The three thugs looked at each other, and then they started laughing. It was the kind of laughter that came from disbelief, from the absurdity of this gray-haired man thinking he could do anything about this situation. Derek let go of Rachel's wrist and turned fully to face Thomas. This ain't your business. Sit back down before you get hurt. Thomas didn't move, didn't blink, I'm making it my business. Let her go. Walk out that door. This ends now. Troy cracked his knuckles, stepping away from Rachel and toward Thomas. You think you're some kind of hero? You're about to get your old bones broken. Brett pulled a knife from his pocket, a 4-inch blade that caught the fluorescent light. He held it low and ready, a stupid grin on his face. Last chance, Grandpa. Thomas looked at the knife, then back at Brett's face. He didn't look scared. He didn't even look concerned. Put that away before you hurt yourself. That was it. That was the line that pushed them over the edge. Troy rushed forward first, his fist already swinging in a wide haymaker aimed at Thomas's head. But Thomas wasn't there when the fist arrived. He had moved, shifted his weight, and suddenly Troy was stumbling forward off balance. Thomas's hand shot out, grabbed Troy's extended arm and twisted. The movement was precise, practiced, efficient. Troy's body followed his arm, spinning, and then Thomas's other hand came up and struck Troy's shoulder at a specific point. Troy went down hard, hitting the checkered floor with a grunt of pain and surprise. He tried to get up, but his arm wouldn't cooperate. Something in his shoulder had been damaged. Not broken, but damaged enough that he couldn't raise his arm. Brett saw his friend go down and reacted with the knife, lunging forward in a sloppy attack. Thomas moved like water, flowing around the blade. His hand shot out and grabbed the coffee pot from the counter, still half full of hot coffee. Brett's knife hand came forward, and Thomas brought the glass pot up to meet it. Brett's knuckles hit the hot glass, and he yelped, the knife clattering to the floor. Before Brett could recover, Thomas had swept his legs and pushed his face down against the counter. Not hard enough to cause serious damage, but hard enough to stun him. Brett slid to the floor next to Troy, dazed and groaning. Rachel and Beth watched with their mouths open. The whole thing had taken maybe 10 seconds. 2 men were on the floor, disabled without Thomas even breathing hard. Derek's expression had changed. The arrogance was gone, replaced by something closer to fear. But fear in men like Derek often turned into desperate aggression. He pulled his own knife from his jacket, larger than Brett's, and held it with the grip of someone who actually knew how to use it. You made a big mistake, old man. A big mistake. He came forward with more skill than his friends, the knife moving in controlled arcs, forcing Thomas to back up. But Thomas wasn't panicking. He was calculating. His eyes tracked the knife, tracked Derek's footwork, tracked his breathing. Derek lunged, the knife aimed at Thomas's stomach. Thomas pivoted, grabbed a metal napkin dispenser from the nearest table, and brought it down on Derek's wrist. The impact made Derek's hand go numb, and the knife fell. Thomas caught it before it hit the ground, tossed it behind him toward the kitchen, and in the same motion, grabbed Derek's jacket and pulled him forward. Derek stumbled, and Thomas used his momentum against him, spinning him around and slamming him face first against the counter. Thomas pinned Derek's arm behind his back, holding him there with a grip that Derek couldn't break no matter how hard he struggled. Derek thrashed and cursed, his face pressed against the counter. Let me go! You're dead, you hear me? You're dead! Thomas's voice was cold now, colder than Rachel had heard it before. You 3 picked the wrong night, the wrong diner, the wrong woman. That's when they all heard it. Police sirens in the distance, getting closer. Beth had finally managed to dial 911 while the fight was happening. 2 minutes later, 2 police officers pushed through the diner door, their hands on their holsters until they assessed the situation. The older officer, a man in his 40s with a thick mustache, looked at the 3 men on the ground and shook his head. Derek Walsh, Troy Miller, Brett Johnson. You boys never learn, do you? The younger officer was helping Thomas zip-tie Derek's hands with the restraints he carried. But then he stopped and looked at Thomas's face more carefully. His eyes went wide. Wait, aren't you Thomas Bennett? The Thomas Bennett? The older officer looked up sharply, recognition dawning on his face. He turned to Rachel and Beth. Do you 2 know who just saved you? This is Thomas Bennett. He's a billionaire, owns half the businesses in this state. I've seen him on the news in Forbes magazine. He's worth billions. Rachel stared at Thomas, her mind trying to process this information. This man who had just fought off 3 attackers, who had saved her life, was one of the wealthiest people in America. She had thought he was just a regular person, maybe a veteran, someone passing through. But a billionaire? Thomas waved off the attention, looking uncomfortable. It doesn't matter who I am. These men were assaulting this woman. That's all that matters. The officers took statements from everyone. Derek, Troy, and Brett were arrested and loaded into 2 police cars. All 3 had criminal records: assault, robbery, drug possession. They were going away for a long time this time, especially with the attempted assault charges and the weapons. After the police left, the diner felt incredibly quiet. Beth had locked the door and flipped the sign to closed. Rachel stood by the counter, her whole body shaking now that the adrenaline was wearing off. Thomas walked over to her, his expression gentle. "Are you all right?" he asked. Rachel looked up at him, tears finally spilling down her cheeks. "You saved my life. If you hadn't been here, I don't know what they would have done. How can I ever thank you? How can I ever repay you?" Thomas smiled, a sad kind of smile. "You don't owe me anything." Any decent person would have done the same. He paused, then asked carefully, "Your daughter?" "The one in the hospital." "What's her condition?" Rachel wiped her eyes, surprised by the question. "She has a rare heart condition. She needs surgery, but my insurance won't cover it all. I've been working extra hours, saving everything I can, but it's not enough. The surgery costs over $200,000. I have maybe $30,000 saved. I don't know what I'm going to do." Thomas was quiet for a moment, thinking. Then he pulled out his phone. "What's the name of the hospital?" "And her doctor," Rachel told him, confused about why he wanted to know. Thomas dialed a number, and someone answered immediately, even though it was almost midnight. "This is Thomas Bennett. I need you to contact Cedar Grove Hospital, Pediatric Cardiology Department. There's a patient there named Katie Thompson. I want her surgery fully funded, everything. The surgery, recovery, medications, follow-up care, and set up a college fund for her. $250,000. I'll send you the details in the morning." He paused, listening. "Yes, immediately, thank you." He hung up and looked at Rachel, whose face had gone completely white. Her mouth was opening and closing, but no words were coming out. Finally, she managed to whisper, "What did you just do?" "I took care of it," Thomas said simply. "Your daughter will get her surgery. You won't have to worry about the cost. And when she's healthy, she'll have money for college." Rachel's legs gave out, and Thomas caught her, helping her sit down on one of the stools. She was crying now, really crying, her whole body shaking with sobs. "Why? Why would you do this for us? You don't even know me." Thomas sat down next to her, and his own eyes looked distant, seeing something from long ago. 30 years ago, I had a daughter too. Her name was Jennifer. She got sick when she was 8 years old, leukemia. Back then, I was poor. I worked construction, barely made enough to feed my family. I couldn't afford the treatment she needed. I had to watch my little girl suffer because I was helpless. I sold everything I had, worked 3 jobs, but it wasn't enough." He paused, his voice thick with emotion. "A stranger helped us. A businessman I had never met. He paid for her treatment, all of it. He saved her life. And when I asked him why, he told me that someone had helped him once when he needed it, and he was paying it forward. He told me that if I ever got the chance, I should do the same for someone else." Thomas looked at Rachel, and she could see the pain and the love in his eyes. "Jennifer survived. She grew up, got married, had kids of her own. She's healthy and happy. That businessman changed everything for us. He gave me my daughter back. I built my wealth so I could do the same thing for others. So when I see a mother struggling to save her child, I see myself 30 years ago. I see Jennifer and your daughter Katie. And I'm not going to let you go through what I went through. You're not alone anymore." Rachel couldn't speak. She just reached out and hugged this man who had been a stranger an hour ago, who had saved her life twice in one night. Thomas hugged her back, and Beth was crying now too, witnessing this moment of pure humanity. 6 months later, everything had changed. Katie Thompson was out of the hospital, fully recovered. Her heart was strong and healthy. She was back in school, playing with her friends, living the normal life of a 7-year-old. Rachel had gotten a new job at one of Thomas Bennett's companies, with a good salary and excellent benefits. She could finally breathe, finally sleep at night without the crushing weight of fear and debt. Thomas visited them occasionally. He had become like family. a grandfather figure to Katie who called him Uncle Thomas. Rachel had started volunteering at a local shelter, helping other struggling parents navigate the healthcare system, offering support and hope. She was paying forward the gift that had been given to her. Derek Walsh, Troy Miller, and Brett Johnson were convicted and sentenced to 15 years each. The diner where it all happened? Thomas bought it. He kept it running, raised the wages for the staff, and made sure it remained a place where people could find a warm meal and a moment of peace. Beth became the manager and used her position to help others in the community. The night that nobody expected became the night that changed everything. Thomas Bennett continued his quiet philanthropy, helping people who never knew his name, never saw his face. Because real heroes don't do it for recognition or praise. They do it because when they see someone in need, they can't walk away. They do it because they remember when someone helped them. They do it because that's what it means to be human. One person's courage in one moment can create ripples that spread farther than anyone can imagine. On that night in Mel's diner, Thomas Bennett didn't just save Rachel from 3 violent men. He saved her daughter's life. He gave them hope when they had none. He proved that in a world that can feel dark and cruel, there are still people who will stand up and fight for what's right. And that's a truth worth remembering. Thomas Bennett's courage in that diner didn't just save Rachel that night, it changed 2 lives forever. This story proves that real heroes walk among us, and one moment of bravery can ripple out in ways we never imagined. If this story moved you, smash that like button, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and subscribe for more incredible true stories of courage and kindness. Drop a comment below. What would you have done in Thomas's position? Thanks for watching, and remember, be the hero someone needs today.